Many black accomplishments in America early in our history either goes ignored or brushed under a nice red carpet. I truly believe that it is very important that we remind, share, and highlight black achievements with young black men and women who doubt their capability and skill to build a united community which will be significant in America today. For example, let's see if you can identify which community these three individuals belong to. If the answer comes to your mind, hold on to it. The first person is business pioneer Mr. J.B. Stretford. This individual owned a 54 luxurious facility, which was considered to be one of the finest, and I mean finest black-owned hotels in America at the time. On top of being rich, he influenced a lot of families in his community to start businesses, and he attracted a lot of young black professionals to come and settle in his community. The second person is Dr. Andrew Jackson. And this doctor was recognized for being one of the best and well-experienced black physicians in the country, according to Mayo Clinic. And with his influence, he promoted wellness in the black community. And lastly, we have Mr. Andrew Smitherman, who owned a newspaper outlet which was respected for its commentaries, which discussed real issues that was happening within his community and across America. So now the question is, which community do these individuals belong to? If you guessed the Greenwood community, then you are correct. This community was located in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I bet if these three individuals were alive today, black social media would be quick to give them the hashtag Black Excellence. But they did more than just live in the same community. Together and with their influence, the Greenwood community became one of the wealthiest black communities in America. What's so crazy is the entire state of Oklahoma only had 2 airports, yet 6 families had their own private airplanes. Now that's black excellence. Unfortunately, in 1921, one of the biggest race riots occurred in that community, killing many, destroying over 35 blocks and leaving many homeless, making it very hard for them to rebuild again as a community. 10 years down the line, in the 1930s, another community united, exemplifying black excellence. This time, not in the state of Oklahoma, but right here in our own very backyard, the Bronzeville community. This community achieved a lot of great things. Black people here owned their own hospitals, churches, apartments, banks, and they even attracted civil rights leaders like Martin Luther King in the 50s and 60s. Today, I'll be talking about how unity within the community is an example of black excellence. And I learned this from my parents, who traveled country to country in search of financial freedom and a community to belong in. Growing up as a black person in Europe was no walk in the park. My father left Ghana at a very young age and settled in Sicily, Italy, where the mafia originated from. He stayed in a very small community with different black folks that spoke different languages, and that's because they were from different parts of Africa, like Nigeria, Sierra Leone, and Senegal. This small community depended on each other for survival. Therefore, they helped each other translate the Italian language to the people who just arrived. They helped each other find jobs and also write letters back home. A few months later, my father met a young lady that spoke Twi, which is the Ghanaian language. And back in those days, to find a girl that spoke your language and ate your food was very rare. Therefore, it was love at first sight. And 9 months later, I was born. After a few years, we moved up north in the region of Emilia-Romagna, which is about 600 miles away from Sicily. The population there was about 5,400 people in the early 90s, which is about like 5% of the entire Ohio State Stadium. Our sense of community had to change at this point because we were the only black family in this community. Some white people treated us well and welcomed us nice because they were fascinated for the fact that we were the first black family they had ever encountered. And some white folks just walked past us holding their noses and harassing us. People driving and honking their horn and saying, "Negro di merda, vai al tuo paese," meaning you black, beep, go back to your country. Those were the norms. I remember being in elementary school and I'll have kids asking me stupid questions. So as a kid, I would give them stupid answers. So the question was, what color is your blood? So depending on what day it was a different color. So on Monday, it could be green, and on Thursday, it could be blue. My father realized that the system in Italy made it very difficult for a black person to excel, especially after a family friend outside of the community could not find a job as a doctor because the baby boomers in that generation did not want to be touched by a black person. My father told us that we would be moving to America. I got super excited because I used to relate to all the black Hollywood characters that I saw in movies. Who has seen the movie The Little Rascals? I remember watching this movie in Italy and going to school, and all the kids ran around me and said, "Harrison, are you related to these people?" And of course, I said Whoopi Gilbert was my auntie. So everybody thought my auntie was a celebrity. Initially, we were supposed to move to New York, but my uncle suggested that we move to Ohio. I remember the conversation that my uncle and my father had. My uncle was like, "You do not want to raise your son in New York. He is going to be a gangster instead of a professor. Make sure that you move to Ohio." We had never heard of Ohio. Come to find out, Ohio was Ohio. So, OH? That's right. Coming to America was a dream come true. But the dreams turned into a nightmare when a group of black Americans laughing came up to me saying, "You African booty scratcher, go back to your country." Till today, I can still remember the sound of people laughing. But not a single white person laughed. At that moment, I realized early that the black community did not like Africans. They made fun of us, how we looked, how we talked. Some even said we had A's. And at that moment, I decided to stay away from them. They wanted nothing to do with us, and guess what? We wanted nothing to do with y'all either, because we knew our worth. And it was so crazy that I did not even care why Rosa Parks sat on the bus. I did not care why Martin Luther King marched on Selma. And I definitely couldn't care about no civil rights movement because they didn't know nothing about who Kwame Nkrumah was or who Haile Selassie was. So I'm like, y'all keep y'all's leaders and we'll keep our leaders. But my mindset started to change after I finished high school and college, when great friends of mine introduced me to leaders like Marcus Garvey, who talked about the importance of black unity, and leaders like Malcolm X, who made a statement that stuck with me for a long time. And he states, "There could be no white and black unity unless there is first black and black unity." This statement rung in my head for a long time. And 2 years ago, when I went to Ghana and went to the Elmina Castle, which is where they held the slaves before they shipped them in the Western culture, the question came to me, "Harrison, what are you going to do about this division?" I made it my mission when I returned back to America that I will create a platform, start a conversation where different cultures within the black community will get to know each other and know their differences and focus on their similarities. I only had two tricks: food and music. and the events were amazing. People shed tears, and people connected with each other. I truly believe that the future is easy to predict when you know it repeats itself. I believe that we can repeat as a community the things that the great communities did a long time ago. To me, honestly, Black excellence is using your accomplishments and achievements to help your community. So now I'll leave you with this question. What does Black excellence mean to you? Thank you.